my advice to everybody is to carve out time that works for you when the chaos around you is at its least intrusive. Try music. Find a playlist of 7 to 14 songs that you like, that soothes you and that you know well, and put it on repeat. And let it sink in. And then pour out your soul, your trauma, your heartache, your troubles. Start writing, start making music, start drawing, start connecting those dots, because those thoughts and the ideas that are the building blocks that you're working with, that makes creativity look like magic.
Today on The Flame, I'm joined by my friend and former colleague, Daniel Ferguson, a talented senior production artist, audio engineer, and storyteller. Daniel has worked with brands like Pfizer, Beachbody, and even Playboy, but his most meaningful project today is deeply personal: restoring and archiving the lifetime work of his father, the legendary Los Angeles radio personality Charlie Tuna. We'll talk about creativity, caregiving, and the strength it takes to keep creating even through life's hardest chapters. Let's get started. Yeah, fulfilling to me is, it's probably, I think I'm still trying to figure that out.
Thank God. We're all trying to figure that out. And that is the most honest answer you could possibly give.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure it out. What is fulfilling? Is it something that meets your basic needs, where you feel valued and you enjoy doing what you're doing, and you can make a living doing it?
Man.
For some people that's good enough. For others, they desire more. And I go back and forth on that stuff, trying to figure out what it is.
You have a family to support, so you've got a different situation than I do. Since I've got my wife and me and 2 dogs, and it's not nearly as a burden.
Yeah.
And she's working.
I'm a lucky man. My wife has been super supportive of me this whole time, and dealing with me not having a job, having to fight with unemployment, having to start my own business and start a podcast and try to turn it into something that's not just a side hobby that's wasting time from me looking for a job,
And that's the fine line that we walk, right? We have to decide as a husband and the household sharing duties and child rearing, that you have to split that fairly. And it seems like that equity is shifted when we're out of work and they're doing more work, or you're at a panic and you're trying to find a job. They rely on you more to do, or they see you as more available to do more work.
Right. And it's coming to grips with, I enjoyed being available for my family. I enjoyed being able to get things done around the house. But at the same time, it's like, all right, at some point, you have to feel like you're pulling your own weight.
Yeah.
There's those times where you're like, all right, I've done the dishes, I've done the laundry, I've vacuumed, like that's kind of what got me through a lot of that in the beginning, was just a to-do list. Just put a to-do list together, whatever it is. It's everything that pops into your mind throughout the day and throughout the week that you forget about. And, I just made a huge list. It didn't matter what it was. And I checked a lot of that off, and that helped build momentum. And I felt like having that momentum, I was like, all right, I'm accomplishing something, even if it's the most minute task, right?
That is a great tip for your Flame Friday top 5. How to get back onto the machine.
Yeah.
Organize those thoughts. And lists.
Build momentum. And it doesn't matter what you're doing. It's just accomplish something.
Here, let's accomplish this interview.
Yeah.
So I can stop being nervous about this. I'm terrified.
Look, this is going to be the most professional setup interview I've had yet. So for our audience, Daniel and I go back a few years to our days at TAG. I work in the in-house agency production and creative team. Daniel was my West Coast buddy, helping me out with production and audio engineering and video. And so, we got to work together on a number of projects. I think weren't you working on the TAG podcast?
The TAG podcast and the Pfizer podcast.
Okay. Right. Yeah. And that's kind of how I cut my teeth in learning how to podcast and figuring that all out. But so for our audience, I'd love to give you the spotlight here, let you introduce yourself and talk about you and what you're up to.
Well, right now I'm looking for work, of course, this is the center to this podcast, but I'm a production artist at heart. And I've been in production since I was very young, since my first Apple IIe. That's when I was first tasked with putting newsletters together, if you can believe it or not. My dad saw me playing on my computer and a dot matrix printer over there, and I was doing Print Shop Pro, and he said, I think we can use that. Wheels started turning in his head. So he became involved in sports programs when I was like 12, 13, and he saw that I could make banners and newsletters. So he tasked me with making the first AYSO newsletter, legal size, folded 4 or 8 page newsletter of all the scores and the highlights of kids, get them excited about the program. It was so popular, we decided to upgrade as soon as the Mac came out. The Mac Plus came out, and then he got me a Mac SE, full page radius display, and all this PageMaker. And oh my God, I was in a whole different world. We went to full size, 8.5 by 11, tabloid size folded in half. And we went to 4 to 8 and then 12 pages. It was a wonderful experience, and that was well received as well. But the LaserWriter Plus is what really sent me on my way, saying what we can do with PostScript and what we can do on a page. It was amazing. So I was constantly doing newsletters for him, but then a friend came by, and he was younger than me, 17, 18. I was like 19 or 20. And he had this newspaper he wanted to start. So we talked and worked through it. And he was going to be all sales and I was going to be all production since I was familiar with PageMaker. So with that same setup, I helped him start a multi-page, full-size local newspaper as a kid. And I was doing production, ad layout, not scanning at that point, but all the layout things you could think of in our early version of all this PageMaker, and Illustrator 88. So that's showing my age right now. And we called that newspaper every so often because we couldn't get it out very often.
That's awesome.
And once we got some things, and we were doing paste it, by the way. We had things on paste boards with spray mount and sending it to a printer for stat camera shots and laying it out the old school way. So I learned a lot. From there, we got more professional, and he sold more ads, and when we got it out on a regular 2-week basis, and we rebranded it as Valley Outlook. So that really took us to another level. And then he ran it for 2 years, doing great ad sales, but then something happened and the sales petered out, and then it folded. So my dad introduced me to a friend who ran a design studio for music marketing. Oh my God. This was a whole new world for me. Musicians and music industry people smoking pot. I don't tell them I said that. And coming in and
it's legal now. It's
brainstorming. That's right. So I was hired to come in there, not as a designer, but as somebody who was familiar with computers. And I was hired to help set up and manage their Macs, brand new low-end Macs, I guess 2 CIs. I did their networking and phone systems. Now, granted, I did not know what the hell I was doing, but I figured it out on the fly, and I read manuals, and I got it working. I was working on this phone system in the closet of this 3-story building with Electronic Musician magazine down the hall and some other major magazines. And I could have screwed up the whole system, but I was just amazed that they let me do that. Come to find out, those designers were instrumental in my career path because they were so inspirational. I still am like friends with them on Facebook today. One designer in particular, one day, Ben Newhart, he's an artist and a designer. He was working with a Wacom tablet. And I was wondering, what the hell has he got in his hand? It was an early version of the Wacom, and he was illustrating and doing stuff in Photoshop. That just took my imagination to a whole new level. So then I borrowed it, and then I got one at home. I played with it, and then I jumped to my next gig. Friends said, hey, we are doing this thing over at Easy Riders magazine that we need retouchers for. So can you retouch? And I said, yeah, sure. I know how to retouch.
Yep.
And they hired me. Based on what I could tell them about and my experience with computers. And that agency really helped. So from there, I became a retoucher, manager of the pre-press department there. And I just kept rolling to job based on people's experience with me and what my knowledge was to them and how valuable it was to them. So it was a crazy career going from magazines to publications to R.R. Donnelley, which was one of the leading printers in the world, doing pre-press for that. Got pulled to, Playboy? That was another story we won't go into, but it was very colorful and beautiful people. And I'm talking inside. The people I worked with were so supportive. And I met a master retoucher photographer. He's doing great work, Oscar Rodriguez. He's a dear friend of mine, and he is an artist, not a retoucher. So I learned a ton there. And then from there, I went to Beachbody, and that was the first layoffs that I hit. And that was the worst down part of my career. Your first layoff is your hardest. I know that's something we'll discuss a little bit later, and I'll get into that. But that is the general arc of my career. After Beachbody's layoffs, I got more hardened and worked at Tag, and then worked at a Platform, which was a gaming marketing company. And there's some great people and great lessons that I take from each of these places. Mainly, it's the people and the interaction with the people that I really value and cherish. And that is what has propelled me and got me started on my creative journey.
Yeah. I mean, it really is about the people that you meet when you are there. Like, I spent 12 years at Tag, and that's kind of unheard of for someone in the creative industry. You don't really, you tend to cut your teeth in a few places. You maybe bounce around 6-8 months, a year and a half, maybe. But I see it on so many profiles and resumes of people that are, bounce around to all the different agencies or whatever, and don't really get to build something. They're there to kind of come in and learn and do a specific role or a specific job, and then they're on to the next payout or the next project. And so I felt like in my time there that I built a lot of really great relationships, and which is why, I get to have wonderful people like you on the show and stay in touch,
Yeah.
But if there's, and you've worked in a ton of different environments. So from, studios, entertainment, lifestyle brands, you mentioned Playboy. I didn't know that. That'll be for our after hours cut. We'll go back on that one. But is there, outside of the relationships, or maybe it is part of the reward that you've received at some of these places, but is there like a specific project or moment that really keeps you kind of in touch with why you wanted to do this work?
Yeah, there are three things, and I hope these aren't too long. And the first one is a hazy memory from early in my career at Easy Writers, when I nailed the vision of the creative director, art director, early in the process of iterating, and that really tickled me, that reward. It was really cool. I was retouching a couple of magazine covers for some niche publications we were doing called Early Writers and Beachwind Quarterly, really high-end coffee table books. I recall the art director dancing and raving about the executions. One cover was an old dog-eared curling Polaroid illustration of a vintage motorcycle stuck on a canvas page. And the other one was a cover of partially carved out motorcycle, a motorcycle carved out from a block of marble. And this was, I didn't know what I was doing, but I somehow had the creative in me to bring this out in an early version of Photoshop. And that was also well received. So that is my first example of reward. And the second one came some years later when I was working with my dad. For 2 years, both personally and professionally, that was the most fulfilling thing I think I've ever done because it ticked all the boxes. After my 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. job at Easy Writers, I would go 30 miles to my dad's home studio several nights each week. He got up when I arrived and went to go nap in the next room, and I sat in his chair at his computer working Pro Tools and doing fine pass polishing, mixing, cleaning up the audio, QA, and bouncing down all 5-hour-long segments for his weekend show back to the 70s. I'd get there between 7 and 9 and work till around 2 a.m. and then drive home. It was hard, but I was insanely proud to be working on something like that with him. And those memories, leaving at 2 a.m., wishing him good night as I left, even if he was fast asleep, are strangely comforting to this day. I knew he'd be getting up at 3 or 4 or 5 a.m. to prepare for his morning on-air shift, so I never woke him. But man, that sticks to my heart. And the third, and probably the most recent example of this is what I find consistently rewarding is working with teams and leaders and people like you, artists and QA people that understand how to give and receive feedback and direction with gratitude, kindness, and candor. Those are my 3 tenets. That type of communication helps me and other creatives I've seen grow, improve, and get inspired by what is going right, not what is wrong. The negativity is easy and cheap and harsh, and I've seen a lot of that. Your words matter, so feedback with gratitude, kindness, and candor enables growth and doesn't crush someone's spirit. I don't like doing that. I'm not suggesting we carry people, but I'm suggesting that constructive criticism delivered well inspires great work and elevates the whole team.
Right. Yeah, I think, for people that are in creative leadership, some of them have a hard time communicating. We're in the business of communication, and that seems to be one of the things that we struggle with the most, whether that's relaying, you're speaking to an account director and they're trying to relay what the client wants or needs. And then, if you manage to work your way up to be in a creative director, ECD role, speaking to people in a way that you want to be spoken to, but then also being able to properly communicate so that you can get the best out of people.
That's it.
I always subscribe to the, thoughtful design, and not in a way where it's like in a mushy kind of way, you think like
Right.
thoughtful, but in a way that you actually took 5 minutes to think about it and consider, and not just be an order taker for a creative brief. And those creative briefs are part of the communication. So, how many times have you run into a creative brief or something like that where it's just not clear, and then it wastes a whole lot of time on the back end. So,
Yep.
I always was one that, my job is to help facilitate to get the best work, and just allow people to do what it is that they want to do and do best. Like, designers don't want to have to sit in a meeting or have to listen to, I've had instances where I've had, clients kind of standing over me, watching me
Oh, I hate
work,
that. Yep.
and nobody, nobody wants that. So in those times where I've had to deal with that, I made sure that was not something that my people, that anytime I had to manage somebody, that didn't have to happen to them.
You are one of the few that I really love working with. To be able to do that, to shield the artists under you or working with you, and interpret it on the fly, that is a gold you cannot replace with AI.
Yeah. And there's so much out there with AI. And God, I could probably spend the next 2 months talking about that. And I try to, I use it myself, but I try to not avoid reading about it even. It's one of those things where, like, when you have too much information overload, it's almost like you go into at least my mind does. My brain kind of like wants to shut it off and not really deal with it because there's so much out there.
Yeah.
But how, is it changing? I'm sure you've seen it creep into like the production realm and the audio realm of how it's changing the workflow for your work.
Yeah. AI, I am staying away from for the projects I'm working on because it is based in analog, and I want to remain true to that and not like infer or sell the voice to somebody else to use
Right.
at this point in time. But it's key to me to not use AI for this other project we might discuss. That, I don't know, it takes away something. It's added, it adds a lot to your productivity, but it takes away from the conversations and the humanity that we really need now more than ever.
Yeah. And I find that it really does eat at your ability to think on your own.
Yes.
And I've really started to push back against myself, because there are times when I'm, using like a chat GPT to help form an outline for something, or a paragraph or a post or something like that. And the more I use it, the more I read what it gives me, the more I'm like, man, it's a convenience. It's not a solution. And so I'm really pushing myself to, like, it's okay for like quick thought sketching, it's maybe the replacement for your pen and your pencil and paper, your thumbnail sketches that we were so fond of doing back in the day. Maybe it's the replacement for that, but I don't think it can at the moment replace true thought and true creativity.
Amen. I can't add to that.
To kind of jump into, you had just mentioned that currently unemployed, you experienced, you're been kind of in and out of jobs over the past few years. And that's certainly, it's the reason why I started the show, right? And it's something that so many creatives right now, and I just saw the jobs report is down again.
I know.
50,000 jobs lost or something like that in the last month. And it's crazy. And for people that are, I don't know about you, not having full-time work in the past year and a half, it feels like everybody has a job but you, or that nobody has a job. It's like, what?
Yes,
who's working?
both.
How are you getting jobs, right?
It's Schrodinger's job.
Yeah.
We are both unemployed and everybody else is employed but you at the same time, until you go look at the stats.
Until you
ask somebody.
So, we talked about having to deal with layoffs, and you've, just like myself, kind of faced multiple layoffs in the last few years. And it's something that a lot of creatives can relate to, especially when it comes to how you feel about yourself when you have to go through something like that. So the experience of dealing with that, even having dealt with it before in the past, where, you talked about Beachbody and being laid off from there, and that was your first experience with that. And I don't know if it's amplified because of the internet and because of LinkedIn. It feels like being laid off then and being laid off now does it hits differently. And maybe it's because of our situation in life. But what has that taught you about resilience and self-worth?
Okay, well, the first time you face a layoff, it will crush you. I don't know about what it was like for you, but I'm not going to lie. It was like imposter syndrome times 10. Yeah, I was doubting my skills and my talents for days or weeks, wondering why I was cut and others were spared. Like I knew I was better than some people, but there they are. The optimism in my nature, and this is, I'm hoping everybody has it. It took a tremendous hit, but it never left. You need that. You need optimism and you need hope. Mine regrew like a lizard's tail. Mine always comes back. Having conversations with peers and finding support really helped me. And those people that you admire, go to them. They're a huge rung on a ladder that lifts you out of that funk and out of that mindset that you cannot dwell in and gets you back to hunting for your next gig and making those connections. My advice for people and myself, based on the few layoffs that I've seen in my day, is to just grieve that loss, but then work past it as quickly as you possibly can. Do the hard part of reorienting yourself, retraining, and targeting your new role because it might have changed.
Right.
And then work on your human connections. I can't say that enough. People, not chatbots, are your support network, and likely the way you'll get hired next.
Right. Yeah, I think it's difficult to, and I've talked about this on other shows where we tie our self-worth to our career or our job.
Our title, yeah.
And you're not your job, you're not your career, but for whatever reason, we base self-worth off of that, where, your self-worth comes from your family and the things that matter. And
definitely
the people that are in your inner circle, they know who you are and they know how wonderful you are. And, it has nothing to do with what kind of job you have or how much money you have. And so I think that's the one thing that we have to, and it's hard to, when you're laid off, to remember that. But for, people that are listening, it may be hard to have positivity in the beginning, but, you have to focus on what matters. Right. And so, that kind of leads me to my next question for you. When we chatted before, you had mentioned that you are the caretaker for your mother.
Oh, yeah.
And to compound that with trying to navigate a tough job market, I can imagine the amount of balance that takes emotionally. But how do you manage that emotional and kind of creative weight of that responsibility?
This is a doozy. I feel for people that are in the sandwich generation with kids and an elderly person. I have one elderly parent that I'm taking care of, so I don't have a whole lot to complain about. But in the creative context, this is it definitely wreaks havoc on your ability to create. Emotionally, also, I must just add that my heart goes out to all of you primary caregivers, helping parents or parents age in place, elderly parents. The cognitive load can be really overwhelming sometimes, and it will drag me down, but I try to keep perspective through pausing and finding a moment to meditate on gratitude. That sounds new agey and woke and all that, but it really does let me recenter my mind. And what's also helped, I've lessened the time it takes me to help mom out for minor things. I don't need to drive over there as much because she now has lots of remote control and automation in place. I can help her with FaceTime, splash top, air tags, a Nest indoor camera. All these things help me answer questions and make adjustments for her comfort and help me find things for her that she lost. It's all at her fingertips, but it's managing two households plus your creative endeavors, plus your self-worth and time for you and time for your spouse.
Do you live far from her?
No, I don't. And that was one of the main things that was part of this whole process of moving her out here close to me, 30 miles away to 2.5 miles away. It lets me go over there when she needs me.
Yeah.
And I can definitely help her more quickly for all the small stuff that she doesn't need to have me over there for.
That's the stuff we need to be using AI for and tech,
yes.
right? How can you use it to help support, parents? I know that I'm constantly in tech support and my parents, they don't generally need my help in caretaking, but certainly when it comes to technology, the
TV.
Figured out how to get my dad to be able to watch the Eagles game the other night. That was some creative hoops that we had to jump through.
These are the wins I love hearing about. I love that.
Is there, have you just kind of cobbled together the tech that's needed for her to suit her, or
yes,
is there,
no,
maybe there's like maybe that's an idea, right? Like maybe there's a suite of home tech to help support that could be created to help support elderly people live free.
If there's anybody listening that does this, please find a turnkey solution, because these ad hoc things that I'm making are just asking to be broken. And my mom will find a way to break them.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mom.
That's R&D, right? That's trial and error. So that's kind of the more serious and stressful side of it. But then there's also, how do you stay while you're doing that and trying to balance searching for a job and, helping your mom? You also kind of have to, in order to find a job, you got to stay on top of your game. And so
Yeah.
how do you keep your creative skills sharp, or how do you even stay motivated? Because I know that's tough too. When you're laid off and you don't have projects and you're feeling down and self-pity and everything. And that's usually kind of in the early stages of being laid off, maybe not where you're at right now, but staying motivated, keeping things sharp and looking for that creative inspiration when you're kind of not sure what's on the horizon. How are you doing that?
That's a fantastic question. Everybody needs to ask themselves. My solution was for me to create my own project and treat myself as a new client I'm serving, and a very forgiving client, by the way. With a new project, product, or web presence, I can test, learn, pivot, and see what it's like from both sides of the creative curtain. When I'm done with that project, or when I think I can release it and it's at a certain level, I can use it for my portfolio and add new skills to my resume.
That's great. That's great. And you forget that you are a problem solver by nature as a designer, right? Essentially what it boils down to is we solve problems, and using your creativity, and it doesn't always have to be with art, right? It can be using your creativity to solve some other solution, like for your mom. I mean, that using that creative side of your brain to kind of do those things. We got to remember that it's not all about just drawing pictures. My friend and I joke, he used to joke, oh, you just sit around and draw pictures all day. That's your job. What are you doing? I'm sitting around drawing pictures. So speaking of kind of the self-appointed project, and this was really one of the things I wanted to, or one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you, because I was so kind of moved by this kind of mission you've got going on. And you mentioned your dad at the top of the show as really the main inspiration for how you got into design and using computers in the first place. Because I'm not sure, I don't think you mentioned if you went to college or went to school for design or art or anything like that. Self-taught, completely self-taught, right? And so, and to me, that's kind of you learn more after college anyway. But you've got what you call Art Ferguson Productions. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you've got this incredible project you're taking on, and that is the restoring of your father's archives and keeping his legacy alive. And so you mentioned that he was in radio, and you got to help him do that stuff, which was really cool. But talk to me and tell the audience about what kind of inspired you to take that on and what that process has been like for you.
This answer to this question stems from something my dad said to me, not once, not twice, maybe 3 times before he died. And it's not what he said, this is also the way he said it. In the few years leading up to his death, when I would visit or come over and do tech support in his home studio, he would be letting me in his chair, sitting down on his computer, and he'd be standing over by the tapes and the vinyl on his wall. Huge collection at that point. And he pointed to it numerous times. Like I said, one day, this will all be yours to do with as you see fit. Maybe even make a little money or support yourself with it. Yeah. And he said that in that almost exact phrase every time. I remember saying something back like, oh, thank you. That's cool, but not something we need to talk about right now, right?
Yeah, right.
Because he's young. He's in his 60s. Meanwhile, in the back of my mind, I'm wondering why he brought it up again. He was like, he looked fine to me.
Yeah.
The fact he said it a few times a year before he passed made me think a lot about mortality and where his health and his head might have been. He didn't tell anyone he was sick, so maybe he was. His source material is in a couple different locations, and I don't have space to sort things out properly at the moment. So right now it's a bit like spelunking. I'm planning on organizing everything later based on metadata, but for now I'm going through and tagging things in our Patreon page and tracking details in a spreadsheet. Old school. I know.
Okay.
The process of collating and organizing right now is very chaotic. My dad was something of a hoarder. People that know him can attest to that. And my family hides that with shame. He saved a lot of stuff, like everything. Documents, photos, tapes, emails, news clippings, so much history. And I think he got it from his mom because his mother did some very detailed scrapbooking of his life as well. So his whole history is there between the two of them. I have my work cut out for me. The process of sharing these archives started with me getting one of his Techniques reel-to-reel machines out of storage and paying a hefty fee to have it fixed and brought back into working order. And then I found a stand that would support the weight of that thing and brought it into my home studio. And it's like a beast mechanical marvels to me. Before I started transferring and taking these tapes, I'm finding I spoke to Wolfman Jack's son for a few minutes because we have mutual friends and family, and he worked with Wolfman Jack many times. Oh, by the way, my dad's Charlie Tuna. I don't know if he said that.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
We didn't. So Charlie Tuna, that was his
Charlie Tuna was, Art Ferguson became Charlie Tuna. That's its own story you could find on his Facebook page. But he worked with Wolfman Jack, and I spoke with Jack's son for a few minutes to talk about what he did, because he had tapes that were in moldy Louisiana basements.
Oh, man.
And they were partially destroyed, so he had to carefully restore what he could. And he told me, you're going to have to bake your tapes. So I got a food dehydrator, researched that whole thing, and put these tapes in a food dehydrator and baked them.
Oh my goodness. And that was how you have to cook them?
You have to cook
tapes. That doesn't degrade them? I guess that's saving them, right? From further.
This is the wonders of research. Acetate, you can destroy. What is it? The other one, Ampex 456, has 2 layers. There's a back coat that gets gluey and sticky.
Okay.
And it'll take the magnetic layer right off. So you have to bake it so it reabsorbs into the back layer.
Wow. At
a certain heat, at a certain time, you can try playing it again. Otherwise, you're getting like shards of metal debris all over your fancy new reel-to-reel. So I started doing that. I took one tape and did a test on a 7-inch reel, and it played okay. It didn't have to be baked. Then I found another one with Karen Carpenter's name on it. It was a big 10-inch reel, and I said, I have to bake this. So I put that in there, and I couldn't wait to get it out. I put it on the deck, started filming it, because I don't know if this is going to play twice.
Right.
I hooked it up to my audio interface, fired up Pro Tools, hit record. You can tell I'm excited. And boom, on my speakers, there he was standing in front of me. In all of his analog glory, his voice as clear and powerful as ever, chatting with Karen Carpenter intimately, really like honest conversations we're having right now. I was in the studio with him in 1976 listening to this. So that gave me chills and inspired me to know that I was on the right path with this project.
That's amazing. I got chills hearing that. You know what I immediately thought of? Your dad is Jor-El. Your dad is... Your studio where you're doing this is your what is it? The Fortress of Solitude?
Yeah, but if you go by the new Superman, I think I'm more of a Gary.
No, you are Superman, piecing together the history of your father and his legacy. That's amazing. That's amazing. And I can just, it made me think we just lost a radio icon in the Philadelphia area, Pierre Robert.
Oh no!
Just passed away. WMMR was it's a big rock station and has been there since the 60s. And so,
I'm so sorry.
He was a beloved figure. So I know that, I'm sure your father was, kind of the same, had that same kind of legacy and was a beloved voice in radio in the area. And so getting to hear his voice again and see him and go through the process of documenting all of this, like, are you discovering something about him that you didn't know, or maybe something about you and your family history that you didn't through this project? There's
so much to find out. And this is true for, I think, anybody, because the only thing that's unique about this in my situation is that he was known to a lot of people. In our family, we often joked quite truthfully that he was actually 2 people. Charlie Tuna was this outgoing stage persona with high energy and fun. And then when he came home, he was Art Ferguson. He was real, reserved, very quiet, hardly a word, workaholic, way different energy. Not mean, just maybe aloof like the fathers of that era. Hearing him on the radio and seeing him at home, I always thought I was missing like half the picture of who he was. So I'm now reading comments as I post these tapes, and I'm hearing stories from his fans and coworkers, and he sounds like a pretty good guy. So I want to know more. No one really knows who their parents are, right? We piece together the pieces and experiences that they represent to us, and we have to infer all the rest. This audio archive is letting me learn about the rest, more about him in his own voice and those who loved his work. It's connecting me with people all over the world who heard his voice on Armed Forces Radio, and I miss him dearly. I've even heard from people who knew him as a young teenager, and that was an awesome connection. Because they said, I remember him as a DJ doing teen hops, and I found a picture for that person and I posted it for her. And that was just so rewarding to have her tickled that it can take her back to that time as well.
Yeah.
I know he wasn't a perfect man, or husband or father, but damn, did he leave a legacy
of
kindness, optimism, and joy all while doing a job he loved.
That's awesome. Talk about fulfillment, being fulfilled in your work and finding creative fulfillment. When did you started this project shortly after he passed? So how long have you been working on it?
The Charlie Tuna archives, I just started working on it 9 years later.
Oh,
I couldn't touch it. It was too radioactive in my mind.
yeah.
The grief lasted a long time, and there's still part of you that never loses that.
So then has it just been just recent you started?
Yeah.
Okay.
The last few months.
And how long do you think it's going to take you to complete?
After I die. Somebody will take the tapes
legacy,
and finish it.
you know, they'll pick it up.
This is a hobby right now, and I'm hoping to turn it into a full-time gig, but I don't have the support right now, so I'm going to continue looking for a job.
Yeah. Shortly after, I think it was after you left TAG, I remember you started a podcast. And for some reason, initially, I thought that this was connected to the work with your dad, but it is something separate, right?
Yeah.
And you've got, a couple episodes out there, and you've got it. It's called the Thankful Spirit podcast. And it, again, very, very heartfelt, very close to, who you are as a person, very genuine. Do you have plans to continue that at all with what you've got going on with your mom and your dad's work and finding a job? Is that something that you want to continue?
I think I have to.
Yeah.
I had high hopes for it.
Yeah.
I was between gigs and got a new job sooner than I thought. Right after I started that podcast. So the new role and title caused me to show that concept for now.
Yeah.
But I'm revisiting it and retooling it for a relaunch. I can't say when yet, but my goal for version 2.0 is to be the voice of kindness and reason, not necessarily with an interview, but to reassure listeners that kindness and gratitude can travel as far and wide as hate and apathy. And my goal and message is to take some of the hate out of the air we breathe, and by spreading words and acts of kindness, empathy, and compassion. It's like what I say.
Right. That's a great analogy that you've got. You think about air being taken from our lungs by all the stuff that we hear and we see, and I'm so aware of it now because my kids are old enough; they're teenagers and they're on social media, and I constantly worry about the things that they see or become numb to. Right. That
it's the latter I'm worried about.
Right, and that just destroys empathy. And I think that the more we can put that empathy back out there, breathe that back out there, it's so important. And I do hope that that's something that you consider taking up again.
Thank you for your encouragement. You've solidified it in my mind.
That's your homework.
I'm going to make time for that.
So I want to talk a little bit about just creativity and purpose. I started the kind of the Friday 5 to force myself to pay more attention to things around me, because when you are working 9 to 5 or you're focusing on a certain project, you're not as aware of things that are around you. Maybe you're a book reader and you stop doing that, or you're just kind of doing away with social media, so you're not taking the opportunity to stay on top of things and trends and things like that. What is it that's keeping you connected to creativity right now? I mean, you've got this unique blend of tools and experience, and it seems like you're able to bring that creativity and thoughtfulness to kind of any role that you're in. So what do you think is keeping you connected to that?
Well, in answer to that question, I feed off a shared vision of a creative director, a producer, or art director. That interplay is what keeps me going. The iterative, collaborative process and that feedback loop of honing in on what is in someone else's brain as the vision we are trying to achieve. It's like a game. I'm addicted to it, and boy, do I love it when I score.
That's also a great analogy. I'm a big Eagles fan, big football fan, and our quarterback, Jalen Hurts, he's always talking about keeping the main thing, right? Try not to get distracted by what's going on around you. What is the main thing? What's the main purpose? And in sports, it's to win. And, in creative roles, it is to be able to kind of produce something that you feel good about, but at the same time working with people that have those same shared visions and goals that you do, right?
Yeah, and that collaboration, that energy, it's nothing like it.
So for other creatives who might be between jobs or balancing personal hardships, I like to always close out my interviews with some good advice. And so what advice would you share about people keeping their creative flame alive?
I'll tell you what works for me. This may sound weird, but we're only talking about feeding the creative flame here amid the chaos that surrounds all of us. Here's what others might relate to or try. I'm a night owl by nature, and I find my muse after 11 p.m. I like to think deeply and find inspiration in the quiet hours of night, sometimes early morning. No AI involved. After the traffic noise stops, after everyone's asleep, and after all the chores are done, we were talking about, I put on a playlist of music, and it helps me find my muse. That familiar music works best for me, I find. And I put it on a loop. I think I've trained myself with these external signals to drift into a state of flow. And for writing or thinking outside the box on personal projects or retouching, love that, paths,
Right.
compositing, design ideation, etc. And my go-to tracks for me seem to be The Counting Crows, Recovering the Satellites, Toad the Wet Sprockets, Fear album, and Jane's Addiction, Ritual de lo Habitual album on repeat. The repetitious nature of it, along with the familiarity, puts me in a different state of mind. I have no idea why that helps, but it might be helpful to somebody else. So summing up, I think my advice to everybody is to carve out time that works for you when the chaos around you is at its least intrusive. Try music. Find a playlist, 7 to 14 songs that you like, that soothes you and that you know well, and put it on repeat. And let it sink in. And then pour out your soul, your trauma, your heartache, your troubles. Start writing, start making music, start drawing, start connecting those dots, because those thoughts and the ideas that are the building blocks that you're working with, that makes creativity look like magic. Do it again, build on that work, or scrap it from the night before and do it even better. Every project I find is a chance to do something fun, better, and different. And I live by the mantra that every day is another chance to be a better human.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I was just transported back to being on the train on my way into school. I went to college in the city. I went to Drexel, and one of the CDs that I listened to on repeat when I was sitting on the L and going into, because I didn't live there, I commuted, was Recovering the Satellites.
Oh, you're a man after my own heart. Oh my God.
To that, it was on repeat for a long time. It's a great album. It's a great album.
Let me know. Put it on repeat.
I am going to have to bring it back in the track. And that's a great piece of advice. And I'm going to tell you why, because we're so inundated with stimulus, right? That we forget how to just sit and be quiet and let our brain work. And you don't even have to sit and think. It's just sit and be present with yourself and allow your brain to wander and allow your brain to just, even just try to shut it off, and things will come to you. I've, in my own kind of therapy sessions, that's one of the pieces of advice that I got, is to just carve out 5 minutes. And it's hard to do, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, you may not even remember to do it until your head hits the pillow. And then you're like, man, and sometimes people, that's not a great time because your mind is racing with things that's going to happen tomorrow, or replaying what just happened. But having that quiet space, whether it's you like music or you just want to listen to the birds outside and let your brain breathe. Yeah, that's a great piece of advice.
I'm glad that you have that that touchstone as well. And anybody looking back with a musical formative piece that they can put on repeat it'll takes you into this weird past portal. And I can't wait to see what you think when you do that again.
I'm absolutely turning that album on at some point today, and I'm going to sit and listen, because I can already hear it.
Yeah. Those opening notes are it's like a trigger.
Yeah. I know exactly where I was. I can see myself, with my huge portfolio that had towed around and just kind of zoning out on the L, just listening to that album.
There you go. That's the connection. We zoned out together in different places at different times to the same music.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Go there.
Incredible. Well, Daniel, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your sage advice for people. And I loved hearing about, the project that you're doing for your dad, Charlie Tuna. And I would love to stay in touch with you about that. And, is there a website or something where you're posting that people can follow along in your journey?
Yeah, just go to the landing page, charlietuna.com.
charlietuna.com.
Has all the socials. The Facebook is the main active. Patreon page is where we post exclusive content. Patreon.com/The Charlie Tuna Show.
Excellent. Well, it was great to talk to you again, and I wish you the best of luck in your projects and in your job search. And we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Bob. This was a joy.
Take care. Thanks to Daniel Ferguson for being a guest on today's show. And thank you for joining me on the Flame podcast. There's definitely more to come. Please take a moment to follow, subscribe, or hit that like button if you haven't done so already. And if you have any feedback or would like to be a guest on the show, send me a message at talk@theflamepod.com. I would love to hear from you.